But most doctors have a lot to lose, and most doctors are very scared. So it takes a lot for doctors to stand up and speak out against their establishment, because it's the most powerful establishment in Australia. So I think Teresa needs a big round of applause. As I said, you know, I already have nothing to lose, so it was much easier for me. So I think we're going to go through Teresa's slides. Now, am I in the road? Do I have to shift the...
No, ladies, you're fine.
Okay.
So we can, I suppose, we know all of you my story, but I also want to emphasize that it's just important to state that once you learn about cannabis, it's basically impossible not to embrace this plant, because this is quite an amazing plant with so many applications, not only medicinal, but on many levels as well. So I'm really very, very puzzled why so many of the health professionals and policymakers are still either uneasy or simply against it. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why we are here on stage to educate the public and start embracing cannabis as a very important therapeutic agent that should be used judiciously and responsibly. And one of the things I want to say that healing, patients have the right to choose how they heal themselves, because my motto is that healing comes from many sources, okay, so many levels, and which is mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, and so on. But once you decide that you have the right to choose, you also have to take responsibility for your own healing. Other people, doctors, can only guide us. We need to take responsibility for that healing, and healing has to come on many, many levels. Now we've got the history of medicinal cannabis. That you want to comment on that?
Oh, the history of medical cannabis is just fascinating. I suppose, just very briefly, of course it's been around for thousands of years. We think it was probably used first more on a spiritual level, you know, because of its psychoactive properties. But there's evidence that it's been used. I mean, I suspect that at the time of Jesus, it wasn't gold as the third thing. I suspect that it was frankincense, myrrh and cannabis, which is an interesting theory to think about, isn't it? Makes a lot more sense. You know, they give 2 precious ointments and then some gold. I just think, and cannabis in that era was considered as like gold. So that's my little theory, that the 3 wise men actually brought cannabis as the third thing. But it wasn't until really the 19th century that we're starting to get the first like technical scientific mention of the use of cannabis indica tincture, and that was O'Shaughnessy.
That's right, yeah. I just also want to add that cannabis was probably the first domesticated crop in the history of humanity, and it probably appeared in Central Asia and just spread it from there. But we want to focus a bit more about 19th century, the more recent history, because doctors were allowed to prescribe it and cannabis were making it, and cannabis was used in the treatments of so many medical conditions. So I'm thinking now, if doctors were allowed to prescribe it before, we are even in a better position to prescribe it now, because we know more about it and we have better technology to get better strains and so on. So we just talk a little bit about the 19th century. So it was introduced by Sir William O'Shaughnessy in 1841 on his return to British India. While there, he researched many cannabis preparations and used them in animals and then in humans later. And it was basically the mainstream medicine of the 19th century.
You know, interesting, the one thing, I mean, I've known for many years that it had medicinal properties, but I was surprised to learn about the seizure control. It was not something, I mean, I'd heard about glaucoma and even about cancer and all this sort of stuff. But then when you go back into the literature, O'Shaughnessy, I think it was O'Shaughnessy who described it. He used it to treat infantile seizures. Now this is a type of seizure condition that has a very, very poor prognosis. I mean, basically, severe infantile seizures means that child will not survive, you know, far into their childhood. And he basically used the indica tincture on this little baby and just kept on increasing the doses and brought the seizures under control. I think the baby still ultimately died.
Yeah,
but the original literature is actually still out there, and so the anti-epileptic properties were actually known from the 19th century as well, and that got completely buried. Even in the pharmacopoeia, I don't think they even mentioned epilepsy. So that was the part that personally I found really interesting, that that the whole thing about seizure control, because that makes it a very special medicine if it can control seizures, especially in certain forms of epilepsy.
And it was even part of Kaufmanship for children as well, and we know the famous Queen Victoria who used cannabis to alleviate her menstrual cramps, and Sir William Osler commented that this is probably the best remedy in treatment of severe headaches. So it was used in the form of tinctures, topical applications and so on, and recreational smoking was unknown until it was introduced in 1910 during the influx of Mexican migrants. So it was prohibited in 1937. That xenophobia was also part of the prohibition as well.
Absolutely, that was actually Anslinger's main reason. DuPont and his cronies certainly had a different agenda, and that was, of course, he just invented nylon. So he certainly didn't want hemp muscling in on that as well as fuel. But Anslinger was just a mad prick, and he didn't have alcohol to prohibit anymore, so he had to find something else, and he hated Negroes and he hated Mexicans. And because the other area in America where cannabis was used recreationally, of course, was around New Orleans. And so the jazz musicians, jazz music was the music of the devil, and jazz musicians used cannabis. So therefore, the conclusion was drawn. It was just a particularly nasty part of our history that changed the face of our planet, unfortunately. Do you think we'd have terrorists if oil wasn't as important as what it is? The Middle East would just be a sandy desert, wouldn't it? But now we're facing the destruction of our planet, all because of the decision that was made in 1937.
It is really quite fascinating when you think about it. The prohibition, the phenomenon of prohibition, that a relatively small group of people is able to dictate and tell us what we are allowed and what we are not allowed to ingest. And the problem is that prohibition just never works. It simply creates the black market in all of this problem and crime and so on. And doctors were actually against the prohibition, and the then president of American Medical Association, Dr. William Woodward, commented that cannabis would stagnate medicinal use and further scientific research. But in spite of that, millions of people around the world still use it, legally or illegally. And I strongly believe that this is very, very important observational evidence. I choose not to use the anecdotals all that much, because anecdotal doesn't really sound all that good, but a lot of opponents of cannabis are saying now, especially doctors, oh, we need more trials, we need more evidence, we need ongoing research, which I agree, we do, but at the same time, we really should start listening to patients and their stories of healing and hope and how cannabis helps them. So this would be part of N=1 study, that one patient is the subject of ongoing research, and I think it will give us better information about cannabis and medicinal plants and herbs and so on, because we can't really use the same criteria as we used to investigate, to research single molecule synthetic agent. But also a very important fact is that doctors, since the beginning of the 20th century, have been basically brainwashed, conditioned, hypnotized into thinking that medicine is just about using single molecule synthetic agent. And that medicine, I'm becoming more and more disillusioned, because it feels like we're using one drug for this condition, another drug for another condition, another one for another condition, and when we need to use another drug to alleviate the side effects of this medical condition. So that's becoming, quite crazy when you think about it.
So what the government is wanting is, I think it's based on, evidence-based medicine, and it's becoming so rabid within the medical establishment that we will be disciplined if we don't follow the evidence-based medicine guidelines, even though most of them, those studies where the guidelines come from, have been funded by, can anybody tell me? Big Pharma. So basically, that's what the government is asking for. They want randomised, double-blind, controlled trials, which cannot be done on a whole plant that has hundreds of active constituents. And it's the problem with herbal medicine all round, it's not just cannabis. And as Teresa said, what we're needing is a thing called N=1 studies, which are observational, and it means that we are using the safest medicine in the world, so we can do this. And we basically just prescribe it, we see what happens, and we create a database from there. So it's not until we start using it that we can create the database. But the government insists on doing it the other way around, which will never work, and we can all see what's going to happen is the trials of the synthetics and the single molecules are going to fail, and then they will turn around and say, see, cannabis doesn't work. So this is what we're up against. It's this, you know, there's a wonderful book that was brought out called The Emperor Has No Clothes, which is a wonderful, you know, book brought out in America about the history of cannabis. And basically that's, you know, that's what it is these politicians and Big Doc, they're like the emperor with no clothes. We can all see the truth, but they can't. We can all see how naked they are, but they can't see it. So this is why educating the public is the key most important thing, because eventually just sheer numbers will mandate the government to do something else. And so we haven't got any option but to keep fighting. So we've sort of covered the history. Any questions at this point? This is very informal today. If we don't get through the whole talk, that's fine. Some of you saw it yesterday. So any questions at this point for either of us? Teresa, you can take the first one.
Yeah.
Have there been any research done by the interested doctors on the whole plant?
It's actually difficult to research medicinal cannabis, especially the whole plant, because, for example, in America, all the studies are funded by NIDA. And NIDA is not interested in showing the positive effects of cannabis. They usually focus on negative aspects of cannabis. So for scientists to get the funding, they actually sort of promote focusing more on the negative side. So the studies are at this stage really quite difficult to follow, and they are not always that consistent. But because that's such a unique medicine, we need to start looking differently, especially that N=1 study, that we follow the patient, and this way we can come to some conclusions. But to be able to do that, we also have to be able to prescribe it as general practitioners. So once again, education is the key, and I also believe that public needs to understand that there's very significant science behind cannabis, that in spite of all of these years of prohibition and dogma and lies, significant discoveries did happen. And
thanks to Israel.
That's right. So, you know, the discovery of THC by Professor Metrula in 1964, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive part. But we know that that molecule is highly therapeutic as well. Then followed by hundreds of other cannabinoids, and then cannabidiol, CBD. Then scientists discovered the receptors in our bodies, CB1 and CB2 receptors. Our bodies are densely populated by those receptors, which are then discovered activated by endocannabinoids, anandamide and 2,G. So these receptors were activated not only by our own endocannabinoids, but also cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. So this plant has the ability to interact with multiple systems in our body, not only the cannabinoid receptors, but our biochemical pathways as well. So it's basically a multi-target medicine that can affect so many systems. We can go to... Okay.
So we've been showing behind you is how the endocannabinoid system works. So I'll just say one thing about it because I think it's just really neat. If we could go back, oh, good work, sister. That's the slide I wanted. Now, this is a very quite a rare thing in the human body. And it really is why this neurotransmitter works the way it does. It's also why it took them so long to discover our own natural endocannabinoids, because they only last for such a short time. They're produced by the body when required, they do what they've got to do, and then they disappear. And how they act across, this is the nerve cell thing, and this is, you've got the receptors where the endocannabinoid will fit. But what it does is it actually travels across, and then it detects that there's not enough or too much of something. So it picks up that information and goes back across the cleft. And this is called retrograde transmission. It's very unusual, and it explains how it acts as a fine tuner. So if you imagine that most of the time, you know, things are just travelling down neurons and something, you know, connects to a receptor and something else happens. Well, the endocannabinoid system works by just pausing and saying, hang on, wait a minute, I just got to check. Oh, okay, no, that's fine, go ahead. And that's how it regulates our bodies. Isn't that just fantastic? So that's why I tend to use the analogy of a graphic equaliser on a stereo. It's like your fine tuner, so it just gently brings everything back to the midline so that everything's balanced. And that's how it does it.
Can we go back to that slide with her? So I just quickly also want to go a little bit more in detail. So
for those who weren't here yesterday.
So we've got a picture of a nerve cell, the neuron, and there's two parts, presynaptic neuron, the space is synaptic cleft, and then postsynaptic neuron. So the neurons, the nerve cells communicate through electrochemical impulses. So when the electrical impulse travels to which is called action potential, number one, when it travels and reaches the presynaptic neuron, it opens calcium channels. The influx of calcium is opening the little vesicles at the end of the neuron, where the pepper beats, and they release the neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters travel across the synaptic cleft, they bind to receptors on the other side, and if everything is okay, everything is balanced, the impulse continues going and neurons communicate with each other. But if these neurotransmitters are upregulated, if there's too much or too little, that opens calcium channel again on the other side. The calcium influx activates the synthesis of endocannabinoids, and then travel back, which we said retrograde transmission. They bind to the cannabinoid receptors on the other side. They close the calcium channel, close the calcium release. That stops the release of neurotransmitters. And once the complete reaction is completed, then cannabinoids are eliminated by the enzymes. So when I think about it, I am in awe with nature.
Absolutely, it's just
such
an amazing system.
smart system. And when we go, can we go back to another slide, just the previous one? It shows how our body are densely populated by these receptors. So once again, that system, endocannabinoid system, consists of three parts. Cannabinoid receptors, CB1, CB2,
and probably more. We've only just discovered. I think they've had discovered a third one, and they've discovered a couple more of the endocannabinoids
we're still
too.
Ongoing.
So it's still ongoing. We're not saying that these are the only cannabinoid receptors. This is just as far as we've got so far. Oh, there's a few questions over there, Teresa.
It's just a simple explanation. Yes.
I understand how CBD helps with your pain and so forth. What part does the THC have in?
Because THC binds to these cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2, so that's how it works, And by activating these receptors, it can actually alter the pain. Cannabinoid receptors are present also in the peripheral nerves, in the spinal cord, in the brain. So by activating these receptors, it will alter pain transmission and pain reception. That's just one of the explanations, but also there are many other effects as well. It's binding to other, activating other receptors like serotonin, can also alleviate anxiety, depression, PTSD, and so on.
I mean, if we're looking at just CBD, it actually works to relieve pain in a different way. Because CBD is mostly CBD tends to bind more to CD2 receptors, which are found in the immune system, where THC tends to bind to CB1, which are found sort of all through your nervous system in your body, actually, in your gut, everywhere. And there is some crossover. It's not just a total, this does one thing, that does one thing. So THC works in the way that Teresa said, by it actually attaches to the various types of pain receptor systems in our body and modifies them. But CBD works in a slightly different way because it actually activates your immune system. Then it tends to work in an anti-inflammatory effect, so that it creates an anti-inflammatory type situation in your immune system, which then also helps with pain relief. So this is what's so amazing about this plant, is that even within that same plant, you've got more than one mechanism of action as to how something happens. So you've got the direct effect on the pain systems in our body, and you've got the indirect effect by creating anti-inflammatory chemicals, and that works via your immune system, and also it would work via the cyclooxygenase system, which is the way that anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories work. So it even has a couple of different ways that it can create increased levels of anti-inflammatory chemicals in our bodies. So it just goes on, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the tip of the iceberg. That's quite complicated.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Teresa.
No.
One thing, and this is what I will just advise blanket across the board, and this is something important. I haven't heard this mentioned much before. Now, you've got a medicine that can both activate and inhibit, because it regulates. So it has to be able to do both things. Does everyone understand that concept? That it can do both, activate and inhibit. But if you push one single element of that to the extremes of dosage, and that's either THC or CBD, you can flip its mechanism of action. So if you give far too much CBD, mind you, it takes an awful lot to do this, so it's generally quite safe. But if you really push CBD to its limits, you will cause seizures. And this is what they have accidentally done with one of the synthetic cannabinoids that they've brought out, is basically it was so potent that it flipped the mechanism of action and they actually seized to death. But that's not what we're about. That's just a cautionary tale.
So if you've got like fibromyalgia, you've got to work on the nervous system as well as the inflammatory side.
Oh God, that's a whole different topic, because then we're looking at clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. I'll just back and we'll just finish this here. Is so the general take-home message is don't ever have one without the other. Even if the amount of CBD present is minute, as long as it's there, it will be enough to give some neuroprotective effect, and you will avoid the adverse effects of paranoia and anxiety. Unopposed THC is what's responsible for all the bad effects that we hear about street weed. It's because they push the THC up so high that they sacrifice the CBD and there's just none in it. So then you start to get the nasties, because in a way you're creating a single molecule drug. And that's what the organised crime people do in the black markets. They want people to become more addicted to it. You know, they want people to have a withdrawal syndrome when they come off it. And that really only happens with an unopposed THC.
What I also want to explain quickly, how the cannabinoids, either endocannabinoids or exocannabinoids, they bind to the receptors based on key and lock analogy. So with that analogy, for example, they can activate the reaction or inhibit. Imagine you put the key in the lock, sometimes you open the lock, and that means the physiological reaction will follow. Or sometimes you put the key fits, but you can't open the lock. So it's, that's how they work. Now, THC and CBD I actually listened to the talk last year in May to Lee Martin, or Martin Lee. It's interesting how he pictured THC and CBD like a couple.
Yes.
And so THC
They
is...
don't like to be separated.
Yeah, so THC is very faithful to CB1, CB2 receptors. And CBD is more promiscuous because it's binding to many other metabolic pathways. But interesting part is that THC is the one that is misbehaving, even though it's loyal to its receptors, but it's misbehaving sometimes, can cause psychoactive effects. So CBD, even though it's promiscuous, having affairs with other receptors, but it's able to put down that THC, modulates its psychoactive effects. And it does through what we call allosteric reaction with cannabinoid receptors. Because THC will bind with, based on key and lock analogy, and CBD will go to the other side and will work like a light, you know, the switch in the light, dimming, yeah. Like dim the light. So it will just say, come on, you're misbehaving, you just have to sort of calm down. So that's why we believe that we know that it's very important that these molecules work together. The concept that we take one single molecule and it will be more effective, we target better and so on, it's not applicable here.
Okay, how long have we been talking for?
We still have you to go.
I know, we're only up to like the you know, a third of the way through the talk, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much, and I think the one thing that's coming across is just how enthusiastic we are as doctors about this absolutely brilliant this brilliant new field of medicine. I mean, it's a field of medicine all on its own. Yes.
Just a question about the THC and the CBD. So if you want to use it for healing, it sounds like you really do need to use both of them.
Absolutely.
Yes. That would be
Yes.
the best, but the approach in cannabis medicine, although I have to say I have no practical experience, which is shame to the Australian government because I should, we understand that based on the way it's where people can use it, that start low, go slow.
Yes.
Less is better. Less is more in cannabis medicine. That's why people have to be guided properly. You can't just fight for one formulation for months and months not to get it. You have to be guided and have access to different formulations because everyone is different and we all have different endocannabinoid system deficiency or efficiency, whatever it is.
It's, you know, it sounds like, oh yes, us doctors just want to take it all over and take the, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I'd just like to qualify that a little because I truly believe that you can grow whatever you like in your own gardens, you can make your own medicine, you can do what you like with it as long as you don't sell it to anybody. But people do still need to remember that once it's extracted from the plant, it becomes a medicine. And if you're going to be using that for a disease, especially a chronic disease, then it's a good idea to have a doctor. You know, so it's not that we're trying to take over cannabis medicine. It's more that let us do our job and help you use it. Because we're the ones that can investigate your disease and do all of that stuff. Yes.
I just want to be the sticking mud in the pie because I'm cheeky. Is that the same doctors that recommended the carcinogenic asbestos in our cigarette filters a few years ago? I'm just being political. It is.
Look, we're talking about really special doctors like us that know how to practice medicine properly. So for all of those out there who think that, you know, it is just a natural plant and you should be allowed to do what you like with it, well, yeah, great, in your own home. You know, but once it's extracted and it's out there, it's a medicine, and you may need advice on how to use it. And that's what doctors are for, and that's what we would like to be able to do for everybody.
Because we are the type of doctors where we don't play gods. We believe in teamwork, in listening to our patients and working together judiciously and responsibly and taking advantage of whatever is out there. And we should take the best of many aspects of healing. Sometimes it could be pharmaceutical agents. We don't push them away altogether. They are good for emergency medicine. If you break your leg, you go to hospital and mend it.
Yes, I certainly would still turn up at the emergency department if I had a heart attack. So yes, we're not advocating wholesale getting rid of conventional medicine. There's...
Sorry, just a quick question. I have a disease called sarcoidosis.
That's
Okay, can I-
really difficult because we agree that that shouldn't
So,
even
Gab-
be there. We don't have to provide that for any other drug we prescribe. Not one. So to me, is don't do it. Basically, we just need to keep pushing that it doesn't need to be done because we don't do it for any other drug.
We just want to change the legislation.
I'm interrupting. So if you got a question, I reckon come up here and talk into the mic because other people here can't hear the question.
Oh, okay, I thought you
Okay.
were winding us up.
We're going. But anyway, coming back to the slide, you can see because cannabis has this ability to interact with endocannabinoid system and so many other metabolic pathways, the list of the physiological responses that, I take it back. I thought it was another slide. I thought I was talking about medical conditions, so I take it back. We want to say that endocannabinoid system is involved in regulation of so many physiological processes because our bodies are so densely populated by cannabinoid receptors. So we have 10 times more cannabinoid receptors in our brain than opioid receptors, and especially in the areas like cerebellum, hippocampus, frontal cortex. So cannabinoid system will regulate functions like stress response, emotions, cognition, learning, balance, movement, and so many other metabolic functions as well, sleep-wake cycle, pain control, thermoregulation, metabolism, digestion. The list is very, very long.
Any more questions? You have to come take the mic if you've got a question.
Yes, these receptors, are they present, say the CB1 receptors, are they present right through the nervous system, say in the arms, in the extremities, or only in the brain and the...
Yeah, they're also present mostly in the nervous system, so peripheral nerves.
Yep.
So,
Except for the brainstem.
yeah, that's the most important
There is
thing.
and this is the most another really fascinating thing about cannabis is the reason you can't overdose on it is because most other drugs like narcotics and even benzos, but they're pretty hard to kill yourself with benzos too, mind you, but it will happen eventually, is by depressing your breathing and your heart rate and everything, which acts via the brainstem. That's where those centres are in your brain that control your vital functions. That's why you are able to be killed by so many drugs, because there are receptors for those drugs in the brainstem. But there are virtually no CB receptors in the brainstem. So we cannot overdose on cannabis. That's why you can't die.
And here we've got...
Isn't that clever?
Yeah. We've got the graph demonstrating how toxic cannabis is. We're talking about therapeutic ratio, so it tells us how many times more you need to take that particular drug to achieve a lethal dose. So therapeutic ratio for cannabis is 1 to 20,000. That means that you would have to smoke 20,000 joints, one after the other, to die. That, I think, is
and they can't even prove that. There have been a few people that have taken up the challenge.
Yeah. Now,
generally, by the time the fridge is empty, they're asleep.
And now we see the causes of death. Cannabis, 0. No
Safer than Christmas trees.
And
safer than ants.
Can you see the pharmaceutical opioids ranking number 4 as a cause of death? So that's, we're talking about safety of opioids.
The deaths from pharmaceutical opioids now outstrips the deaths from heroin. That's interesting. Another little interesting fact.
Yeah. Okay, can we go back to this entourage effect, the previous slide? So here we talk about the physiology of that one. We're talking about entourage effect, that's the synergistic working in the plant, where one single molecule is not as effective as the whole working together. And,
he just died.
Yeah, I'm gone.
Haha, that means I can talk now. I've done very well.
Did you die, did you?
Given that I can just talk, non-stop.
I don't know how that
So,
happened.
now just to point out, the entourage effect is a bit of a...
We're back.
Which is bad. It's a bit of a misnomer. I mean, really, we are simply talking about plant synergy that exists with all herbal medicine. And they've sort of hijacked it a bit to point out, you know, sort of how good cannabis is. But in actual fact, plant synergy underpins all herbal medicine.
And I wish we could apply this entourage effect to our society, all working together for the highest benefit of everyone involved. Wouldn't be idealistic, I think would be practical way to go. And also that CBD modulating psychoactive effects of THC, that's one of the examples of the entourage effect. And when we talk about cannabis, it's not just cannabinoids. We must not forget the terpenes, flavonoids, and because they are very highly therapeutic as well. So we really supported the whole plant.
And of course, you know, cannabis is food. I'll just briefly say about that with the using hemp. Now, remember, hemp seed oil comes from the seed. Hemp protein and whole hemp is from the seed, contains virtually no CBD or THC. But what the oil contains is omega-3 and 6s in roughly the same ratio as our cell membranes. So that means that the plant is there for us to eat the seeds and the oil in order to prime our endocannabinoid systems so that it works better. So whenever you're deciding on any cannabis treatment, or indeed any herbal medicine treatment, you need to start on hemp seed oil and hemp protein, because that will prime your body to accepting the exogenous cannabinoids better. So omega-3 and 6, I mean, I'm not saying you can't get these good oils in lots of other foods. Flaxseed's very good, like, you know, but the ratio is a little different and it suits our cell membranes. And then the protein that comes from hemp is one of the few, well, there's a bit of debate as to whether it is a complete protein. It's a little bit low in one of the essential amino acids. Chicken eggs are still the best source of complete protein, but it comes pretty bloody close. So it's a superfood that you can add, you know, to just boost, you know, in your porridge and stuff like that, to boost, you know, not only your protein, but your omega-3 and 6s. So just to, and of course, juicing the whole plant is what adds, you know, that's your complete picture of using hemp as food. But of course, you know, until we can just cheerfully grow our own plants in the backyard, juicing is a little beyond most of us. Back to you, Teresa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyway, that juicing is such an important part that we are finding out, because cannabinoids come in acid form, so they don't have the psychoactive effects, but highly therapeutic. And very quickly, I'll share the story here. Mother and daughter approached me about 10 days ago in Katoomba, and the daughter is about 21, she's got a sister who is in her early 20s as well. And both of them suffered from extremely severe Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, to the point that one of them experienced anaphylactic reaction to one of the conventionally prescribed drugs, and they didn't work at all. The girls were losing weight and suffering immensely. So out of desperation, they decided to use cannabis. And they used cannabis as in the form of fresh juice from the leaves and homemade suppositories, as well as vaping. So to have it as fresh as possible, the family decided to grow cannabis at home. Unfortunately, not so friendly neighbor decided to report them. And so then they got raided by the police around, I think, November last year. Everything was taken away. The plants, the seeds, the oils, everything. And I have to say that the plant was helping them so much that they never felt better. And unfortunately now their father is facing the court for doing that. So things like that are still happening, and this is really
Teresa, you know, it's just extraordinary how often it's happening.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And once again, we should be able to use the whole plant medicine, maybe let's say up to 5 plants, provided we are not selling to anyone, we use for our personal use. And I highly believe in, I would love to be able to have a couple of plants in my backyard and have the fresh juice, but I wouldn't dare, because, you know, that would be, I think, finished for me.
Oh yeah, yes. You know, as I said, Teresa's actually a little bit braver than I am, because I've already faced the worst, but she risks everything. You know, and I think that's why it's really good that she's, you know, someone that will stand up and and
So
say
it's also
something.
very heartbreaking for me and very, very difficult because I'm so active in this space. And what I want to everyone to understand, but what I'm fighting for proper access, affordability of cannabis plants. So at this stage, I'm just dealing mostly in education and lobbying. Patients come and ask me for guiding them or prescribing. It's very, very difficult for me because first question I have to ask them, would your specialist endorse the application? And they say, no, my specialist is totally against it. They say it's highly addictive, bad and dangerous. So then, as a GP, my hands are tied. I'm unable to do that. So it is more and more frustrating for me, especially when on a theoretical level, I appreciate how important this plant is, but I'm unable to prescribe. So that's very bad.
So I think I'm getting the feeling that we've probably talked for long enough. So we'll just maybe take a few more questions and Michael can round up the next speaker. And
I'm happy. As long as people can hear the question.
yeah, if you've got a question, please come up and grab the mic to ask it.
Or you repeat it.
Or I repeat it. Who's got the next question? The lady's just asked, with breast cancer, is CBD the main component? I'd have to pretty much say a blanket no to that. You will hear a lot about how CBD, you should do this, rah, rah, rah. Unfortunately, a lot of it is people who are selling CBD. The beginning regime for cancer treatment on the whole is a 1-to-1 THC-CBD ratio, pardon me, which is a little difficult to achieve in our present climate of supply, but we do our best. So you can Google a lot about breast cancer and cannabis, and there will be one group that will say this protocol works, one group will say that protocol works. All you can do in Australia is get what you can and make sure that you have as much of both as you can manage, and that is the only guidance we can give you at this point. Yes, Caroline?
Deb, I know there's been talk about with the estrogen enhancers that they don't want you to take THC because there's a lot of research about it. I don't know what.
Okay, so we go to that. I've actually have researched that, and as a matter of fact, what's coming out now is that THC is almost certainly going to act the opposite way. And I'll use black cohosh as the example of this. Black cohosh is also not recommended for people, as you know, who've suffered breast cancer. I just researched it for uni. Black cohosh does indeed interact with estrogen receptors, but only some of the estrogen receptors. It's what we call a selective estrogen receptor modulator. And so in many herbs, very few of them are actually estrogen-like molecules. They just interact with the estrogen receptor. So black cohosh does indeed interact with some subtypes of the estrogen receptor, but not the ones for breast cancer. And so as a matter of fact, black cohosh not only protects your bones and your blood vessels, it protects you from endometrial cancer. The tamoxifen that they give you to prevent breast cancer after you've had it, if you have it for more than 5 years, your risk of endometrial cancer goes up by 200%. So which would you prefer to have, black cohosh or tamoxifen? And so they're saying the same thing about THC and CBD. And again, what they're learning is that they're SERMs, they're selective estrogen receptor modulators, and they are actually protective of breast tissue because they don't bind to the breast tissue estrogen receptor, and they don't bind to the endometrial one. They only bind to bone and blood vessel. So all the crap they're saying about is just, basically false. So you can quite safely use as much cannabis as you like with any form of cancer. As a matter of fact, most bloody herbs you can use. You know, when I think the thing about black cohosh, and I'm thinking, you know, because I had the same thing, you can't use that if they've had breast cancer, it's like giving them estrogen, you know. And it's just utter bullshit. Really, I mean, so what I'd recommend is if you've got breast cancer, get a hold of the black cohosh as well. There's several herbs that will help you prevent the return of cancer, not just cannabis. Black cohosh is just a herb. from the Native Americans.
But I just wanted to also say that the US National Cancer Institute's website does point out, the US Cancer website, the National Institute of Cancer website, does point out that THC and CBD both have negative apoptic, that kills the cancer, negative effects on breast cancers on a test tube, on a piece of paper, on a glass in a lab. So it does actually kill. That's the thinking.
Well, there's actually just so much evidence. There's, actually I did a talk here. It's on the Hemposium, the Nimbin Hemposium site on YouTube, and it's just a slideshow with the song in the background, and that actually goes through, how cannabis kills the cancer cells, and talks a little bit about the whole cancer experience, which I've been through as well. And that can be found on that Nimbin website, and I think it's got a picture of a cartoon cell, and that's the slideshow. And actually, I'd recommend going to the YouTube thing for the Nimbin Hemposiums, because there's a lot there, there's a lot to listen to. And so if you ever want to catch up on a bit of information, that's a nice place to start, because all the speakers that speak here are just excellent, every single one of them. You will get a lot of information. And I mean, I'm sort of like sorry that Andrew Catalaris isn't here, because he's always such an entertaining speaker. And I feel like they're really big shoes that we're trying to fill here. Dr. Potts just so famous, and even though I don't think we're quite as mad as him, but still, I just would like to, as a mark of respect, say we are sorry that Andrew Catalaris isn't here, and maybe just a moment to send up a few prayers to whomever we pray to say that he gets out of jail at the end of January. I mean, he may be mad, but he's a very good man and he's helped a lot of people.
He's in court Wednesday.
So, all the best from us anyway. You pass that on to him. If you're in touch with him, just say Dr. Deb says all the best, mate. Because obviously you can't do Facebook in fucking jail, can you? So,
What amazes me, I just want to say that as a doctor, like so many patients quite often go for cannabis after everything has failed, where they're given few weeks, maybe few days to live, and then they go to cannabis and their tumors shrink and they recover. So how can we say, oh, we need more evidence for that? Can we look into the patient's eyes and say there's no proof? For that patient, it's 100% proof. And that's why I strongly believe in observational evidence. That's very, very important. We just can't ignore the stories.
No. Can't ignore the stories. The reason people try cannabis too late is because the vast majority believe every word their oncologists say, and they wait until the oncologist says there's nothing further we can do for you. By that time, many patients are at flashpoint, and that's discussed in that talk I did before, and at flashpoint nothing will work. There is nothing that will turn that cancer around, unless perhaps a miracle. But you usually have time. From the time you get your diagnosis of stage 4D, which is usually, distant metastases, and that's when they pretty much tell you you're fucked, then that is when you start looking. Not when they've said, you now have multiple tumours throughout every single part of your body and we give you days to live. No, sorry, you cannot turn that around. So the best advice that I can give you is act early. I am not saying don't go down the conventional medicine road. I did. I don't know if I'd even make that decision again, whether I would do the same thing. So I would never judge anyone for doing chemo, radiotherapy, surgery, all that sort of stuff. Because when you're dying, you'll do anything. And I understand that completely because I've been there. And, but I would really seriously consider alternative therapies if you've got the time to do it. And don't wait until the oncologist say there's nothing further we can do for you. It was my knowledge as a doctor that saved my life. Because as soon as I got that diagnosis of stage 4D, I thought, well, shit, I've got a few months and that's fucking it. Otherwise, if I don't do something about this, I'm going to be at flashpoint and that's going to be the end of me. And luckily I heard about the dendritic cell therapy in Germany and we got that underway and well, I'm still here. So, you know, I think the prognosis for stage 4D melanoma is way less than 10% over 2 years, and I'm now well over 18 months in remission. Yep. So pretty miraculous. And so that's why I say, you know, there is a difference between having stage 4D and reaching flashpoint. You still have a few months to act, but you must be very aware of what stage your cancer is at, because you can leave it too late, and nothing will pull it back. Once those cells have mutated and they've gone back to their primitive form and they're multiplying at a rate of knots, there's nothing your body can do. There is no drug or anything that will turn that round. It's your time.
But also I want to say that when you face your last days, and we call it palliative care, I see cannabis as a very, very important medicine, assisting people in going to the other side in a peaceful way. It's not about giving them little injections and doing this assisted death. We can provide better medicine that will control the nausea, vomiting, pain, but also if I have a bit of euphoric effect, I think it's very desirable in this situation. And quite often these people die zombied out with opioids, benzos and all the other heavy agents, unable to communicate with their family. So I think that ultimately we all have to face our last days, and when I am on my deathbed, I would definitely like to go for cannabis medicine and assist me in that difficult process.
Now that's a testimonial. Because I don't know about you, but you know, palliative care was sort of one of my sort of sub-specialty things as a GP, and I've done a lot of palliative care, and I just think I couldn't agree more with what she's saying, and I just want to, again, we've mentioned Andrew Catalaris, just as a mark of respect. I'd also just like to, and I'm going to get a bit teary here, I'd also like to mention the compassionate healers that have been working tirelessly over the last few years, where because we can't get the strains that we need, we can't get the strength that we need, we've only able to use cannabis palliatively, and how many compassionate healers have had to watch their patients die, knowing that they could maybe have saved them if they could have got the strains and the strength of cannabis that were essential. So I'd be like, you know, a round of applause for all those compassionate healers that have learned what we've got to learn is how to watch your patients die. Now, how many of you in a community without being a doctor have had that experience? So these poor people that are just making oil and trying to help people have to cope with watching the people that they're helping die, because that's all they can do is help them die. And I think we need to acknowledge that, and this is a good place to do it as any, is thank you to all the compassionate healers. Yes.
Can you please talk about the role of cannabis and Alzheimer's disease?
Absolutely. How much do you know about it? Cannabis and Alzheimer's.
It is very interesting because cannabis is shown to be neuroprotective, highly neuroprotective agent. It has the ability to actually regenerate neurons, but also has the ability to reduce the amyloid plaques in the brain of patients with Alzheimer's. But not only that, because of that ability to interact with so many neurotransmitters, it can improve behavioral problems, it can alleviate anxiety, depression, and so many other possible problems as well.
I mean, you know, the problem a little bit is this incredibly, oh God, I don't even know how to put it. Put it this way, when they banned pethidine in the emergency rooms, because its metabolites are toxic, and you shouldn't use it for more than 24 hours. I mean, but instead of just using it like that for the people that can't have morphine, they just banned it altogether. And one of the arguments that was used is that, oh, we can't be seen to be making people stoned. Now, and I thought, well, what do you think? What do you think morphine does? You know, what do you think benzos are doing? What do you think anti-epileptics are doing? Antidepressants. They're all forms of stone, aren't they? They're all psychoactive drugs. So we've got this weird thing that, you know, we can prescribe all these drugs, but hey, don't let it be something that makes you fucking feel good, you know? And this is this attitude we come with cannabis. Oh, you'll make them euphoric. What a terrible side effect.
And when you think about patients,
you know, we don't want to be euphoric, do we?
let's talk about patients in nursing homes.
You don't make them euphoric.
Are drugged out because...
Sorry, we're doing a bit of a
comedy thing here now.
Yeah,
Oh, you
all
can
of
be the
these
straight
patients
guy.
are drugged out with antipsychotic, antidepressant and so on because they dare to scream and shout if they are in pain and they are unable to communicate it. To me, again, that would be wonderful medicine in nursing home situation. Give them a little bit of a pot, make them feel happy, a little bit euphoric, relaxed, control of pain. What's so bad about it is, you know. And one thing, I talked about my patient yesterday that I've been fighting to prescribe medicinal cannabis, and New South Wales Health Department suggested that I will use benzos and antipsychotic for this patient because they are more, because they're approved. And who cares if the patient becomes confused and has fallen, will break her hip and end up in hospital with surgery and maybe complications like pneumonia and die.
Excuse me, Dr. Teresa, how hypocritical is that system? That's a
It
chemical
is.
restraint.
We agree with you.
It's illegal to restrain anybody, whether it be by physical means or chemical means, but yet they're saying that you have to restrain that resident by chemical means.
That's right, yes.
It's
That's
fucking
right.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, they had a little bit of trouble with that, in actual fact, because, you know, the most common way of restraining a patient was putting up the bed rails. And, which is not chemical, right?
No,
but of course what happened then is they all started climbing over the bed rails and getting even worse injuries. So then they lowered the beds to the floor, so then all the staff get back problems and play with workplace health and safety. So I must admit, trying to keep demented residents in their beds is indeed a big problem. And I don't agree, and I also don't agree with chemical restraints, but we do have to understand that it is a little difficult. You know, I mean, the whole bed rail thing I thought was just really hilarious in the end because, you know, there's just no answer to it. It doesn't matter what way someone in workplace health and safety is going to get upset about it. And, but I do agree, chemical restraint is not good.
But you could always chemically restrain the Alzheimer patient at night with a bit of THC.
Exactly.
Exactly.
In the day you can give CBD
Yes.
because it's got neuroprotective qualities.
We'd all be happy to introduce that into the nursing home, sister, don't you worry.
I was actually gesturing, not trying to knock you out.
I know.
This lady's first.
Every second person these days seem to be on these antidepressants. Whether it be for pain, whether it be for mental issues, various different reasons. How does cannabis replace antidepressants?
Probably completely. Okay, now just to describe, we're looking still at the thing of the single molecule versus the whole plant, okay? And we're also looking at a branch of medicine that's completely individualised. So it might take you a little while to find the exact right cannabis medicine for your depression. But usually you've got the time to sort of do it. So I'm not saying that antidepressants don't work. There will always be a small section of the population where they'll work really well because it happens to suit that particular person's neurotransmitter profile. And that's where we do get our genuine responses using pharmaceutical antidepressants because it just happens to suit that person. So this is why we have, with the variety we have and the possibilities are endless, that we can design a cannabis treatment individually to address that problem. I mean, I had 2.5 milligrams of Lexapro, which is a half dose.
No, it's very small.
It's a very small dose.
Yeah.
It was a test dose. I went on a serotonin trip for 4 days. The worst drug reactions I've had have been to legally prescribed drugs.
Yep.
And so I know that there is no way my depression had anything to do with serotonin,
Because like,
for example. So, and that was one of the things, and that was years ago, and that was one of the things that first made me think, hang on, you know, if this is happening to me with my ADD brain, then if we try and give that to another ADD person with depression, it might do the same thing. Because we've got enough serotonin. If we get depressed, it ain't our serotonin that's doing it. It's some other neurotransmitter. So the whole theory of serotonin being the mediator for depression and noradrenaline is only part of the story. Each individual person with depression will have a different neurotransmitter profile that's helping feed into that depression. And cannabis is the best thing to gently readjust your neurotransmitter profile.
I have to comment that in my experience as a GP, I find the antidepressant SSRIs, tricyclic and so on, quite ineffective. They don't really and many side effects. That's very sad. Patients, they tell me, okay, I'm not so depressed, but I actually don't feel anything at all. I feel numb. I feel like a zombie. Or patient coming, okay, I'm taking the Zoloft or whatever for 5 years, but I wish I could stop it. I can't, because each time I try, I feel suicidal. Or I describe the zip-zap effect in my brain and so on. And
bloody Effexor.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That would have to be the hardest drug I've ever tried to get people off.
But
like, I've actually got people to get themselves a digital scale and get out the capsules, because the lowest dose you can get is 37.5. And I've actually worked out a reduction program for Effexor if anyone's interested. But you need a digital scale because you need to weigh your actual capsules so that you can decrease by a very small amount each time.
We also need to understand that.
Isn't Cymbalta?
Same thing. That's a dual action. Yeah, Cymbalta is a newer form of. I think it's actually the isomer of. It's a different shaped molecule of Effexor.
Yeah, because I only I take Cymbalta.
Yeah, and getting off the dual action ones are just. I was just, you know, again, you know, some of the things that I have to live with that I've done as a doctor, and the people I've started on Effexor is one that I've got to live with, I must admit.
But it's
anyway,
difficult to stop.
But we're brainwashed.
Yeah. What I want you to also address here, that depression, anxiety, it's also the reflection of some parts of us that need to be healed. It's not just about medication. We need medication because sometimes these emotions are so overwhelming that we can't even think straight. But in our society, we are so focused on being just happy, just nice, just positive, just perform, just be active, and ignoring the parts of us, the shadow part, the painful part, the negative part, that needs to be addressed. We need to become aware of it and do the process, emotional process. If we take, whether it's cannabis or drugs or anything else, just to escape the painful emotions, they will get us. We have no choice. We have to process, we have to feel it, sense it, transform it, and love every bit of us. Even if that part is murdering us, we still need to acknowledge. So apart from medication, whatever it is, herbal or synthetic, whatever it is, we really need to connect with every part of ourselves, painful, not painful, good, bad, words and all.
It sounds like you're moving into the hallucinogenesis therapy talk.
Still no escape, doesn't matter what it is, you really need to go and explore.
And that'll be the next big area actually, is the use of hallucinogens. You know, especially for, you know, exactly as you say, learning how to connect with every part of our bodies and doing our healing that way. So watch this space. Yeah.
I actually have experienced exactly what you said. I have a chronic disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and 23 years this year. I treated it naturally until 3 years ago, and old age started to catch up. I've reached for a couple of medications, and I've ended up in hospital almost on my deathbed. I cannot take them. I was jumped through to PBS and take a biological, but I am in a constant 3-year and going on to 4-year battle with my rheumatologist and doctor about the use of Cantharoid. I very straight daughter, and the only constant, and she's a medical scientist in the hospital. And I said, oh, maybe I should give up hemp. It's the only constant that I've done, and maybe that's the problem. And she said, no, don't. The only thing that's kept you without having a shoulder replacement and a knee, 2 knee replacements, I've had one, an elbow replacement, and maybe even getting it in your spine or your neck is the hemp. Don't stop. So when I say this to my rheumatologist and then say, can you please prescribe it, where do I get it? She goes, will you tell me? I'm sick of this bullshit. I was born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and I refuse to listen to bullshit. Isn't it legal? I thought it was.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, how many of us are sick of the bullshit?
Yeah.
You know, when the medical...
Into my own hands, and I don't want to take this biological. I've been on it for 15 months. I'm trying to work out how to do the concentration levels, how to make it into a tincture. My partner is a homeopath. He's a fallout of a mental health problem. His big side effect when he got off the drugs was suicide.
Well, we need to get off the stage and let the oil makers get up here, I think. So you can find out all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's... you know, when the medical guidelines came out, you know, that we were eagerly awaiting, weren't we, Teresa? Because they're only looking at the Cochrane, you know, database and evidence-based medicine, there was limited evidence for this, no evidence for that. And the upshot of it was basically, is their advice was, oh, you can prescribe cannabis, but it's not going to do your patients any good. And that's when I thought, oh my God, we have just gone nowhere. You know, we're going to have to spend 2018, the same as 2017, is refuting the bullshit.
It has to change.
Over and over again, we tell them, you know, I cannot believe these people cannot see the truth.
And I tell you about the New South Wales hotline. On 23rd of November, the Health Department announced that it's going to be a hotline that will assist doctors to make it easy to prescribe and guide them and tell them what to do. There will be $6 million towards that. I have a meeting with Mr. Hazard on the 12th of December, and they were kind of sympathetic and carrying on, we want your feedback, how to make it work, all of that kind of thing. So I just said to them, look, just legalize it. We don't really need all the paperwork and bureaucracy. But anyway, on the 8th of January, the hotline was supposed to be active from early January. On the 8th of January, I rang the policy advisor that I have a meeting with, and I asked her what's going on with the hotline. And she said, oh, not active yet. And I said, why not? Oh, we're just not sure. And then I asked her, how about when it's going to be active? I don't know yet. So then the next question was, what are the medical conditions that you are likely to approve? We're not exactly sure, but chronic pain is not going to be one of them because there's not enough evidence for that. So there is $6 million for January, and they actually don't know what they're doing. So I'm very suspicious, thinking that it was probably just announced to please the public. Again, deception.
It's all doing with placating the public, isn't it?
And meanwhile, we check the RDT site before every trip.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, you know.
Because you can't get the
Like,
price.
I mean, Australia is the only country in the world that is using this sort of drug testing, which bears no relationship to how impaired you are. And I think that to perpetrate that law upon the public, and do they think we're that stupid? They're not testing for driving impairment, they're testing for illicit substances. At least they could be bloody honest about it and say that's what they're doing, and then we know where we stand. But, you know, so that's another fight for 2018. We've got the evidence. The evidence has come in not from just Australia but all over the world that this drug testing is not valid. So that's our fight for 2018 is get the... And now they're going to add cocaine to it. I mean, it's great to catch the politicians, but, you know... but really, I mean, it still defeats the whole purpose of it. You're still testing for the drugs that least impair driving. And how crazy is that? I mean, alcohol is the only one that's really tested for that impairs your driving. And we can even explain that scientifically. Like, alcohol wrecks your communication between your frontal lobes and your cerebellum, where your automatic motor programs are. So that's why you think you can drive, but you can't.
Alcohol drinkers are more cocky drivers. They think they're invincible, they can do anything. But in fact, if you only have cannabis and don't mix with alcohol, these drivers appear to be more cautious, slower. They drive more
You think you can't drive, but you can. Totally different way around, isn't it? And so it's because the cautiousness comes because of you know that you're stoned and that you know that you have to drive carefully. But when you forget about it, your cerebellum just takes over. I mean, how many of you have driven through red lights, roundabouts, completely straight, no drug on board, and have not remembered the last 5 kilometres? Yeah, and we still drive perfectly fine because our cerebellum takes over the automatic program and allows our frontal lobes to have a bit of a holiday. That's exactly what happens with cannabis. So really, and also, if you're so stoned that you can't drive, you know you're so stoned that you can't drive, and you don't drive. It's as simple as that. It's an absolute self-regulating mechanism, isn't it? Whereas with alcohol, you have no idea when you can't drive. So you think you can.
When you're stoned, driving is often the last thing on the list.
Absolutely. Yeah, yes. As I discovered when I tested my first batch of oil, it was a lot more effective than I thought it was going to be. I didn't drive for 2 days. You know, so, and I mean, you know, it's called being a responsible adult, and most of us are. And don't we get sick of the government telling us what we can do and can't do, and we're really responsible anyway? Anyway, yes, question?
Can you tell us anything about cerebral palsy for a child?
Oh my God, have you got like 3 hours? Okay, so this is...
no studies have been done in Israel and it helps.
You can probably... okay, cerebral palsy, I think you're going to find it comes into the realm of probably needing THC. We're finding that autism and autistic behaviours and stuff like that, and cerebral palsy has some of those sorts of things in it. Ask him to respond better to a mixture of acid, THC and THC with just a little bit of CBD. They're starting to find with some of the brain damage things that CBD only actually worsens some behaviours. So it's something that we would suggest that you start with CBD only. You start with non-decarbed and then go to decarbed. Then you watch what happens. If the behaviours worsen, it's generally a sign that you're going to need THC. And if it actually worsens, then I'd actually go straight for decarb THC. I wouldn't even bother with acid. But if you're just not noticing anything, then try adding in acid THC. That's not psychoactive. You're starting to get some beneficial effects from the THC, and it will enable you to judge how your child's going.
So like with everything in cannabis medicine, it's always start low and go slow and observe and monitor the patient.
Yes.
So you're suggesting start with a CBD?
You can start with CBD, non-decarbed, and then I've suggested that probably won't do anything much at all. So then you go for your decarbed CBD, and the Hemp Embassy has both of those in the Endoka one, and I can recommend those as being what they say they are. We can also actually work out a dosage with that too, which is really great. So I'm not really pushing any one product. I'm just pushing what I know, that we know what's in it. So I am not tied to anybody. I just report my experiences, if you know what I mean. So I'm not advocating any particular brand, any particular oil maker. I'm just interested in knowing what's in the medicine, so as a doctor I can prescribe it properly. Does that make sense? However, the stuff at Hemp Embassy you can pretty much trust. What's in it is there. You know, it might not be as potent as what we'd like at times, but they're not out there to rip you off. It's an uncertain game, and at last we're starting to get some testing done, and I can at least reassure you that the medicines are safe. So that's the main thing. Yeah. So our medicines are safe here, so that's really good. Now, just won't be a moment. Okay, so then what you do is a stepwise fashion. So you go from non-decarb CBD to decarb CBD. Then you add in non-decarb THC, which is your acid THC. Actually, your acid CBD too. They've got the same. They're both in the acid form, which makes them non-psychoactive. So once you heat it, it knocks off the acid bit and they become active, both CBD and THC. But they still have a degree of their health benefits when they're in the acid form. So it's not useless to use, it will give you a guide. But most of the time, for autistic and cerebral palsy behaviours, you will need to add in active THC, but you just do it gradually. And if you get a bad response, I mean, the worst thing that's ever going to happen is anxiety. They might throw up and then they go to sleep and then they wake up really hungry.
Would that active THC be in combination with CBD?
Oh yes, don't ever use it by itself. But what they're finding with autism is that the amount of CBD required is really very low. You know, maybe what's in the natural plant, in a way, because in the natural plant, you're very lucky to get CBD above 2% in the plant. And I'd say for autistic kids, they seem to be doing quite well with what you'd find in the plant, but just using more active THC. And, you know, they slowly decrease the amount of acid and add in more active THC as the child becomes used to it and as they grow and as the behaviours change. It's always an ongoing thing. And nothing that you're going to do is going to be wrong. And you're never going to kill your child. So, okay, you know, you might give the child a few bad experiences in your, you know, but what are they like on massive doses of anti-epileptics? Have they any cognition? Have they any personality? Do they ever wake up enough to go through their normal milestones? So even the adverse effects of cannabis are nothing compared.
This is such a crazy argument stating that oh, we don't know the long-term effects of cannabis on developing brain. That really doesn't make sense. Any thinking person would just say, oh, how about all of these ongoing seizures and other problems? Plus, this is the situation that unfortunately these children don't have a long life. So we're talking about giving them better quality of life. And my heart breaks to these families that struggle so much to obtain their medicine, dealing with the chronic disease of a child, then also struggling with authorities. And even cases where children are taken away from their parents. That really, really breaks my heart.
Well, we're looking at it for our granddaughter, and unfortunately my stepdaughter is in the medical system. She's a nurse, and she understands a little bit about natural healing, but not a lot. So it's going to be very difficult trying to help her.
I think that's another prayer just to send up.
Just quickly, there is a 5-part series on TV on YouTube called Endocannabinoid System 5-part series.
Oh yeah.
You've only got to watch the first one, and if the penny doesn't drop when that one gets watched, then switch off and try and help the person. Yeah. Seriously? The first part of the 5-part series, she nails it on the head that we all have the basic endocannabinoid system to be healthy. We have to have it activated. Done deal. If they've got a problem with that, then leave them alone. You can't help them. I believe anyway.
So THC in children. Okay, so the law in Queensland is no one under 25 is allowed to have THC. So what does THC do to the developing brain? Well, we're starting to get some evidence coming now. And
don't you know?
Yeah, they reckon. So the adolescent brain should not, in actual fact, have a great deal of THC. It doesn't cause any permanent damage. But on the studies that they've done on cognition and memory and stuff like that, the one time in your life that it will cause amotivation is during your adolescent years. So a very simple way, in actual fact, is to introduce low THC, high CBD strains for adolescents, so that their introduction to cannabis will activate their endocannabinoid systems. You know, we're not actually flogging their brain with THC, and yeah, basically, you're not doing them any harm. But heavy use of unopposed THC in adolescence will cause temporary changes in the brain. It will cause amotivation. All those effects seem to disappear in middle age. Now, the really exciting things for all of you over 50s in the audience, THC improves our cognition. And you are not going to believe this one, it helps our memory. So the studies coming out for the over 50s is toke on.
But isn't it,
and it prevents Alzheimer's, so wow, double whammy.
Chinese emperor, was it Shennong, apparently used it for absent-mindedness.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it really?
Sorry,
the very drug that can have me up here going, what the fuck was I saying?
Just about.
We'll stop you from getting Alzheimer's, yay.
We've got to go now.
I've just got to say something here. I don't know if you guys missed this because you're all old. But she was actually being sexist to the young people about the adolescents not being allowed to take.
Well, not really. I just said that we should choose the strains. We should choose our strains for adolescents that have a higher CBD and lower THC, so that we avoid the really nasty things that can happen when adolescents overuse cannabis. And most of the cannabis addiction, you know, comes from using street weed with no CBD.
And smoking with tobacco.
And smoking, yeah, all right, Michael, smoking with tobacco. Yep, smoking with tobacco doesn't help.
But Debs, I've got to tell you this one thing. There's a New Zealand study. There's a New Zealand study which showed they studied 20,000 people and it showed that all the adolescents were stupid and that they had lower school grades and they weren't finishing school and they were getting poorer jobs because they were smoking pot. This is a serious study that went on for 20 years. It involved thousands of people and it was finished just a few years ago. Then someone looked at the study and they said, Dummkopf, you're stupid. And the reason is because they was just studying poor socio-economic areas where people who are young tend to not finish school.
That's a lot of...
So you've got to be very careful about demonising research.
We're fighting for boys now, but
It's
anyway, I listened to Martin Lee last year in Hamburg Expo, and when patients are, approach him, what to do about our teenagers smoking cannabis, he said, go down on your knees and thank God that this is just a cannabis only, not other drugs.
It doesn't cause lower grades.
That's
Do you know, in actual fact, that's what I actually always go thanks for. When my boys were growing up, thank God cannabis was the only thing they ever touched. So.
Okay, now I'm kicking you off.
Yeah, we're
So thank you so much, Dr. Teresa and Dr. George. Thank you. And they will be outside to talk to you further.
Get up now, I'm stiffened up.
They will be around. And just one thing I wanted to tell you about Andrew Catalaris. So there's a vigil on the corner of Hyde Park, opposite the Downing Courts, on the 24th of January, 9 o'clock that morning. Any mates you've got in Sydney? That's something to know about. And I'm sorry I had to end them because they're champions, aren't they? Thanks, Ed. Dr. Teresa's book is outside, if you're interested. Dr. Deb, she's carrying it inside her and it's so big. So I've got a surprise. I'm changing the program. It's always changing. So CBD Luke, as we know him by, has been just an awesome, also crying, friend to us for quite a few years. And, he had a big family drama, big drama he'll tell you about yesterday. But he's here today and he's going to talk to you just for 15, 20 minutes. Really appreciate this man. He has changed a lot of people's lives. He's a busy man and I really appreciate he's come over. He's changed a lot of people's lives. I'm not just North Coast, everywhere. You got 15, 20 minutes.
Alright, will you describe me already? Hi there everyone, how are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I wanted to come along today and just share some of the experiences that I've had over the last 3.5 years of being a medicine maker of THC medicines and an importer of CBD medicines and a carer and provider to many people that are sick and dying or have now passed. And the reason I couldn't be here yesterday was because my dear grandmother died on Friday afternoon and I had the honour to be with her body all Friday night and anoint her with some oils and just to reflect on the process of life from its beginnings until its end, and so I just wanted to honour all of the people that have come before us, the ancestors that live on in us and will live on in our children, and the spark of their fire that takes root in our heart, and may we live well in their honour.